Mom informs me that this road was just recently paved.
And this is the current one.
Now tell it again.
The one on the upper left is Colorado.
Well, this one right here was in Lyman, Colorado, 20 miles from out of town on the mile-high prairies of Colorado. And then when they moved out here, we lived for a year down towards Spokane, down in the McGuire's area. And we moved up here in 1935. And this was the house that was on the property here. It was built early in the century.
48.
48, yeah.
Then after we left, because it wasn't while we were there. But it doesn't cool down. By now, they expect it to be down around the 90s, like it was when we got there in May. And you don't stop using your air conditioner until November. Thanksgiving. And there's no heat in the houses, so that shouldn't be allowed.
Oh no, this is a movie, so that's fine. You rock all you want.
It's not a still camera. Yeah.
Oh, we're not.
No, we're not.
Tape's rolling.
Okay.
It's rolling now, Mother.
Oh, is it? You
Well,
want to look around?
You take a look at Maribel, if you will, and you can see that it's on.
Let's see the red light, Mother. Okay.
Mother, what year was it we moved up here? Do you remember?
All fall. And it began to rain, and it rained and froze 30 degrees below zero. Killed the trees that were 90 years old around in the valley. Never had half such a freeze.
Yeah, it froze up the water system too. And I remember Grant was up on the hill up here above the barn trying to dig out that water system that was frozen. And I remember watching up there, and he came out of that trench because there was an earthquake. And he was down in the trench below the surface of the ground, and when that earthquake hit, he came out of there like wondered what in the world that was. And it turned out it had been a small earthquake somewhere that he heard it very clearly in in that trench where he was digging that water system out. So
I sure remember being without water. Because of that.
yeah, Catherine, how old were you at that time?
3.
3.
Well, then you know,
Elizabeth was
5. When did we move?
35.
I know, but in what month?
October.
I had my 3rd birthday.
the school had already started. The kids were in school, weren't they, already when we moved up here?
You too.
Yeah. I was one of the kids at that time, remember? That was a long time ago.
You remember that?
I haven't been that young for a long time, Mother.
Frozen, the ground was so frozen. After we got here, 2 days, Grant was out with the horses, with the one with a walking plow, plowing the hay meadow. Do you remember that?
I don't know when it was frozen.
Well, just as quick as he could get to it. Yes, it was frozen.
Was that the year that Dad had the broken pelvis?
Well,
That's why Grant was here.
that meadow was all covered with a lot of great big stumps and all kinds of stuff. And,
I know.
and was that was the first year you were here, you put that meadow into potatoes, as I recall.
Great big potato crop.
Yeah.
Did we have a big potato crop?
Potatoes everywhere. You can
But they were little tiny potatoes.
Were they?
They didn't get very big, but you remember we took them down and stored them in that room
On the hardware.
on the old hardware store, and went down there and sorted through potatoes down there. Until
I learned
potatoes.
the next year how to grow potatoes. Because
I wish you'd have learned that year.
well, I did
You planted too late?
no plant too deep.
Oh, that's all.
Just don't plant very deep. And I haven't failed until I planted frozen potatoes.
Yeah, this just this last year, we're going to plant potatoes out there, and she came in here and found some that had gotten frozen in here. She brought them on and says, "Oh, we can plant these." I planted these. So we raised frozen potatoes. The vines were pretty good, but there's no potatoes on them. So we don't plant for frozen potatoes anymore. We get vines but no potatoes. So anyway.
Well, had set up sprouts, so I thought they would.
Well, they did grow, you said they grew vines, but whatever needed to be there was done.
Well, why in the world did you decide to come out here in the first place? You were settled in Colorado and had been there for a long time. Why did you come out here?
Well, we had so much hail, grasshoppers, floods. Year after year, that we got about one crop in 7 years. And we just couldn't raise a family on it. To top that off, then it began to get very dry. The dust bowl season was on, and that means that the dust from Oklahoma and Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado, and all those places was just filling the air. You remember those?
Oh, I remember that, the dust. In fact, in service when I was in World War II, I was stationed at Wichita Falls, Texas. And the story I was told about Wichita Falls, it was the only place in the United States where you could stand knee-deep in mud and still have dust blowing in your face. And you never knew whether you were standing in Oklahoma or Texas, because they exchanged every 2 days.
Yeah,
So was
sure.
that kind of what the way it was where you were?
Oh, yes. It was just
Very
dark black. It pitted the windshields,
Yeah.
took paint off.
Well, you finally moved out of the old ranch house into Lyman because of the crop failures, constant crop failures, and I think we were in Lyman about 3 years, weren't we, in 2 different places.
Yes.
And then,
But that wasn't all we moved for. It was time for you guys to be
Yeah.
joined in the high school.
Yeah.
I didn't want to send me away from home.
okay. Then it was, I think, in June of '34. Grant was just out of high school, and I was just out of grade school, and the girls hadn't started school yet.
No, they were born in 30 and 32. Well, and then, we came to Idaho. Elizabeth came on the train with Aunt Margaret, and she saw her first colored order, was scared to death of him. And Margaret had bought her a bag of oranges, and Elizabeth had dropped them, and the porter tried to help her, and she was just scared to death. And Grant came on the immigrant car with Uncle Royal, and he had quite a time getting here too. One time he couldn't got left. And we had on that immigrant car our team, our piano.
Team of horses.
You had your team of horses too?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Oh, yeah, we brought Bell and Buster out from Colorado.
Is that right? Well, I never knew that.
Our first
Yes.
horses that we had out here were in that car.
And we had some farm machinery, but we didn't have the right kind when we got here. We didn't irrigate back there, and we were moved on to a place that had irrigation. Even when we moved up here, we didn't have the right kind of tools.
Didn't Gordon's leave some tools? Did they leave any of the farming equipment? I know there was that
Big old drill.
building that was full of all kinds of stuff, but there wasn't any farm equipment there.
There was no sewing machine. I wish I had let it get going.
Catherine, do you remember that move out here from Colorado?
No, she was a year and a half old.
Yeah.
Later on, when we went down through the blues, they told me that I saw a windmill and said that was just like we had at home.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a windmill, it was a cistern.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
We were looking for a wheat ranch. No, that's not very long to get, but it took so much money to get started. You had to have thousands of dollars, and we didn't have it. In fact, we arrived with, the car was overweight and took half of what we had. We had $25, and it took $12 to get that out of the house.
So you had You ended here with
6
6
children.
kids, 2 preschools, and 1 just finished high school, and $25 and had to pay half of that to get your hot car out of Hawk. And it was depression time, and what are you going to do now? What'd you do then? Thought you had to do something.
Well, they already had a place.
Well, Granddaddy rented that place.
Well, I'll tell you now, we went to church the very first, well, Grant went on that irrigation, on that immigrant car,
Yeah.
and all the rest of us came in the car. We stopped in Yellowstone Park and had all kinds of car trouble, and we knew we couldn't afford to stay overnight, so we,
Well, rod went out.
I don't know what
There was a
happened.
rod went out, and that thing banged all the way out here. I remember that rod being out. That was a very noisy trip out here.
Well, anyway,
Where did we stay then?
just outside Livingston, I think is the place that's outside of
Just outside the park, just in the north end of the park.
And we stayed there, and then got
Did we camp? Did we sleep outside, or where did we stay?
well, some place by Cheyenne, Wyoming. We stayed the first time.
What, did we
Yeah.
sleep, that's what I'm asking, did we sleep outside?
No, we carried our camp food, but we must have had our bedding or something, and we got a hotel room or a motel room, and stayed all night. But I can't remember what we did at Livingston, but probably the same. And when we got here,
We came from Livingston clear to here the next day?
got here at night. Well, I think we did, yes, I know
Yeah,
we
it
did.
was, matter of fact, I remember when we came over the mountains, coming from out there on the prairies, 20 miles out of Lyman out there, where there was no such thing as trees hardly. I was scared to death because I was through the 8th grade and I was scared to death because I knew we were going to get eaten up by bears. And when we came into all that timber up there in the Rocky Mountains, and I was scared to get out of the car down to Granddaddy's because I knew there were bears all around there and we were going to get eaten up by bears. And,
Well, Vern's fellows were living here, and we drove in about 8 o'clock that night.
yeah, well, it was 8 or 9, yeah, it was dark.
Why the decision to come to Idaho though? Why not someplace else?
Well, Vern had a cousin that was out here in the Northwest, and she told about great big potatoes and great big fruit that grew. Great big potatoes, one potato would feed a whole family. And there was so much talk about the wonderful Northwest that Vern decided to read the Northwest.
Well, then in addition to that, Royal
No, they weren't here.
and Granddaddy had come out the year before.
They were just coming out to look, to see what it was like out here. They were going to go to Arkansas. They
Oh.
were going to Arkansas.
Well, but they bought those places when they were out here.
But they
that year.
came out here and they liked it so well, they bought those
Yeah,
places.
yeah. And then Granddaddy rented that place
For
that we
us.
lived on when we were coming.
European place. And,
Well, tell me about your reception down at church that first Sunday.
well, they didn't pay much attention to us. We filed in.
I bet they
No.
did. How many families came in with 6 kids?
Well, we sat down in the next third seat back, and Weatherall's were right in front of us. And we sat there, and all 6 of them along our little partridges.
Well, you know, that you say they didn't notice as much. I know better than that.
Well, anyway, they didn't say much. They tried to turn around and
Well, for one thing, Mother, there were 4 boys there, and there were a few girls there, and I know they noticed. I can't forget that.
Well, anyway,
I can still name who they were, too.
the second Sunday we went, Weatherall turned around and shook Vern's hand and said, "Did you ever sing in a church choir?"
I'm surprised they didn't say that the first Sunday you were there.
Well, they didn't know we were gonna be there the second Sunday.
Just traveling through.
And that they could tell by the look of, well, with the emigrant car, we got there on a Monday evening, and that train, it started several days before we left Lyman, but it didn't get here till Friday evening after we did. It was funny up around Kootenai. So after that, we were always, where did you get this?
This in Idaho or in Colorado?
Oh, that's well, George was in the 5th grade, I guess, when he came here one day.
We started 5th grade when we came.
Well, it was anyhow 3 years, 4 years before.
What
that.
color is it inside? Oh, okay.
It's white with cookies. It's a cookie jar that's, go ahead, tell about that. That's an interesting story.
Well, one place that there were trees in the country, it was called Walks Camp. There was a spring there, and there were a few trees around it, and so the community all the way around had community picnics there every 4th of July and every Labor Day. There was one particular
It was
lady,
the social place of the area.
and there was one particular lady that was the head of most everything. That was Mrs. Huffman. And by that time, all 4 of the boys were singing together. That's all of our family at that time. George was probably 6 or 7 years old, and he carried the lead, and we had all 4 parts, even
we
him.
had male quartet. And all four parts.
And this lady knew that. They would come see us once in a while, because we went to the church there, and they would get around and visit us once in a while. The boys used to sing for them. And she wanted us to sing at one of these picnics on the program. Gonna have a contest. Well, so would the boys practice their song, and they sang. And I know that, well, she knew there weren't really very many people that entered that contest. And she knew that we wouldn't win first place. So we won first place, and it was this cookie jar, and 50 pounds of flour and 25 pounds of sugar. So,
Well, that's what I meant, why they didn't notice us when we came to church. You can't tell me that they didn't, that first Sunday didn't make a tremendous impact, because you're not going to have very many people come in that already have 6 trained voices in it.
yeah, but they were just little kids.
Now, by the time you got here, they weren't such little kids.
Well,
Remember,
from 5th grade to, granted, just graduated at 16.
you had 2, one
High
going
school.
into high school, one a junior in high school, one that graduated from high school, and one
Didn't
in
you all
5th grade.
start singing in the choir as soon as we got here?
I suppose.
Well, not the first 2 or 3 Sundays.
Oh, not the first 2 or 3 Sundays, okay. They probably didn't have choir too much in the summer either, did they?
Oh, yes, they had choir. Because I remember Evelyn sang a solo. It was How Beautiful Are These. Of those pretty good music. I remember after that, silvery voice she ever heard.
That was.
Yeah.
That was a fantastic voice that she had.
And anyway, they welcomed us so, and we were just poor farmers. And here we lit in the middle of the nicest people.
Probably by the second week that you were here, you didn't have 2 nickels to rub against each other, I don't think.
No, probably not. Didn't make any difference. They didn't care. No. They accepted us just as we were. And they certainly made us welcome, didn't they? We've had wonderful friends there.
And a lady came up to me, Beth Bentley came up to me at a reunion a while back, no, at the 100th reunion church, Beth Bentley came up to me and said, "Hey, John, you remember our first job?" I said, "Yes, I do." She said, "Well, I do too." Well, we were living down there in McGuire's, and Mr. Brugger, Chappie's grandfather,
Oh, yeah.
Chappie's grandfather, the old Mr. Brugger, lived down there, and he had an orchard, a big orchard. You remember he had orchards, and he hired Beth Bentley and me to thin his apples. And I not only helped thin the apples, but I also irrigated the orchards. You remember I used to go down there at night and
Grandma, John, I don't remember all the things everybody did.
Oh, I used to go down there at night and I'd irrigate down there one night, and then I'd go out to McEwen's and irrigate down at McEwen's the next.
How'd you get there?
I don't remember how I got there. But I irrigated McEwen's place, and I irrigated Brugger's place with shovels up and down, keeping the water running down the rills.
The old Brugger lived out in McGuire.
Yeah, right out there by
McEwen's lived
right down here on
east of Greensbury.
Greensbury Road.
Out where the horse track used to be.
Now, you know you really made an impact on McEwen.
Yeah. Oh, they were wonderful to us.
And then you moved up here. We lived down there for what? About.
Did you know they were instrumental in that?
Of this?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
Well, I asked you that about a year
Sue
ago.
Myrna had taught school up here at this little school at the Cedar Creek School here. And, so she knew the Gordons up there.
And the Gordons, and Mr. Gordon died the very same day that Vern got the log room,
Oh, is
the
that
log
right?
ran open.
Renewed on the place down there, and they made
Well,
made
it was.
connections.
They would have renewed it, but they upped the rent price.
Oh, I see.
And so we moved up here. And how long have you been on this place?
Since 35, October, the last of October, 35.
Just 55 years.
55 years. Just finishing 55 years.
It's been a good place.
Yeah, it has been.
It was all stumps that Johnny came.
Well, I tell you, Mother,
Your brother going up the stumps.
yeah, we cleaned up stumps and blew stumps out and
Goodbye, horse power.
yeah.
This, where the house is now, was an orchard.
Yeah, that's right.
And this old orchard, I guess, went back almost to the turn of the century too, didn't it?
We were talking about the pear trees, and when the pear trees were planted
Yeah.
the other day, and she said that she didn't think Gordons planted any of the trees, that it was the people before them, and Gordons moved in 1910. So
Well,
it's amazing that they're still even alive, let alone producing.
well, you know that lamp that I've got that we've taken down to Mother's new place. Mother was very unhappy because that old apple tree out there in the lot died, and then this pear tree right
Oh,
below
the
the chicken.
transparent?
No,
Oh, no,
it
the
was-
Wilty.
Yeah, and then
That was my tree.
yeah.
That was my playhouse.
Well, it died, and it got pretty big because it'd been there a lot of years. And then the pear tree died out here below the chicken house. And so Mother was pretty unhappy about those trees dying, and she wanted some remembrance of them. So I cut out a chunk for the base of that lamp out of that tree out there in the lot. And then I took a limb off of the old pear tree and turned it down and made this into a lamp. So she's taking her old friends with her down there.
Oh, taking a lot of
She's
old
got
friends with her.
part of the apple tree and part of the pear tree.
That one from Lee was made from the yew wood off the place too.
The old trees out in the barnyard, the trees out there, that they had two of them side by side. There were three of them actually, but there were two of them that were right across from each other. Thurston and I used to climb those trees, and we each had a branch, and that was our house, and we visit back at our houses, and we visit back and forth and pretend and do all kinds of weird things.
You know, those roses that are over there were there when we came.
Mm-hmm.
I know good and well Gordon's didn't say. Mr. Gordon was lazy. Casey.
Oh, he was?
That's what they
How did you
told me.
figure that?
Well, I never knew him, but that's what everybody told me. He was family. He sat by the front window and rocked in the chair all the time and watched and looked at the beautiful scenery from the old house, that old house.
Well, now, let's see, when we moved up here, there were, well, Schenzels were the last house up there. And then, who lived across the street?
Blackman.
Blackner. And then, who lived at the top of the hill?
Did Wyatt?
Casey's.
Casey?
Casey's. And then down below was
Okay,
Whitaker's
that's
on
where Casey-
the east side of Greensbury, and Wagner's on the west side, and that's all that were up here. Nobody
Davies
else lived.
came once in a while.
Well, Davies had owned this property over here, but they lived in Spokane, and he just came out once in a while to play around his place.
You know about how the Weldy boy was killed, don't you?
Well, he was going down the logs, going down the hill, wasn't it?
Yeah. Hauling with the mules,
Yeah.
and on the hill, Davies came out in his car
And spooked the
and
mules.
spooked the mules, and they rolled over him and killed him.
Hmm.
And that was their 13th child, and the only one that grew them maturity,
Oh my.
and it just took the heart
Where did they live?
Quick,
on the
the
Russell place.
On the Russell
They
place?
built that place up there, yeah.
They were there when we came?
No,
No,
the
they
Russells
had
were there
just,
when we came.
this had just happened
Oh.
just before we came.
No, Tom Russell was there. when
Well,
we
I thought
came.
they were. How long did Casey's live at the top of the hill? Because I don't, when you said they lived there, I didn't remember that. Wyatt's are the ones, the first ones I remember there.
How old were you then when we came up here?
3?
Well, I think Casey's were only there a year or two, or maybe 3 after we
Not
came
very
here.
long,
Yeah.
not very long anyway.
Well, Mother, you and Dad were responsible for tearing down all the buildings and replacing all of the buildings that are on this place too. The house you built and the barn. And all of the buildings that are here were what you put on here, I think.
They are now. They are now. Well, what do we start with? We got, I guess the shop barn was about the first thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess it had to be
Oh,
because
chicken houses
No.
were.
when we built the chicken houses, you know,
That wasn't the barn.
you remember the philosophy about the chicken houses.
Yeah.
Chicken houses would build the barn, would build a house, but the house wouldn't build chicken houses, and that, the old statement.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, that was the reason. Some people build their house and then build their outbuildings, and the philosophy was, no, you build your outbuildings because that's where your income comes from, and then they'll build your house. But the house won't build the outbuildings.
There was a chicken house here. That little red one. The one George knocked down burned.
About 12 by 12 or 16.
Oh, we
maybe
used
about
it.
16.
There were a bunch of old buildings, but they
Well,
weren't much.
the chickens stood on top of each other, there wasn't room. And it was all red, I mean, all wet. And one of the first things, granted, you kids were all in school. The girls weren't. But Grant built a lean-to to that chicken house and made it bigger, you know. And remember, what was that building that they turned into a chicken house? That was their shop, wasn't it? That was their shop. And we put chicken houses.
Well, all of those buildings were pretty bad. In fact, the house, right up there in our bedroom on the south side, you throw a cat through the wall up there. Those outside boards were cupped back, and there was an open space of about 2 inches every time it snowed. It blew the snow in the house, in the upstairs house there. I think all 4 of us kids, boys, slept in one bed to keep warm up there, if I recall.
Well, anyway, I don't see how people lived those days. There was the study, and there was just the siding.
Yeah.
There wasn't a sheeting.
No, no insulation, no anything.
Well, you had a chimney that went through from the stove in the living room to that bedroom, and the stove for the chimney went through the west bedroom, and you only had heat when there was fire. So first thing in the morning, there was no heat at all.
Whatever kept that stove pipe from catching the rest of the house on fire, I'll never know.
Yeah.
When we did pull the house down, the wood was charred.
Sure, you bet.
Amazing.
Whatever caused it, kept it from catching the fire.
This is the house over here?
Yeah.
It was under the tree. Why don't you tell now about this house?
Well, that's your story, Mother, because you and Dad
Well,
figured what you wanted to build. How'd you decide where you were going to build and what you were going to build?
I didn't decide where we were going to build. He decided where to be. And for years, we looked around wherever we went. These stairs lifted just right, and I was up here at the Oliver place, in the place. He took out his tape and measured it. And he'd go in here and there, and wherever we went and we liked something, that's what we were going to put in the house. And when somebody broke her storefront window, she gave us the glass that was left. That's what went into the doors.
And the diamond.
And that's what those sliding windows into the nursery that we call it. So we had some nice glass for that.
Why did you build a nursery? Did you expect to have some more kids?
Well, we had a lot of them.
Oh.
No, we didn't have it. It was grandchildren. But
Oh, I see. Okay.
I got a bunch of them, you know.
How many?
21 grandchildren.
Have you kept track of your grandchildren?
I got 39 of them.
39?
I know all their names too. I don't know their birthdays.
Sarah told me the other day that she said, you know, nobody believes she's got grandparents that are in their 50s. Most of theirs are in their 80s. And she said, most of my friends don't even have a great-grandmother.
Well, I'm still kicking.
Well, tell me about building this house. You got the idea from every place you built what you wanted to put into it, but where'd you get the money?
Finally, we thought we could build it. But I had to take some money to do it. And we thought we could do it. So we built the basement. And dug the basement. It was on the hillside. And
I remember very well a bunch of us around with a hand with a motor-powered cement mixer, some cement to pour all of the.
that's right. And it was a lot of family help. We never got it done. Never. And we had, of course, beforehand, cut the tin.
On my clear piano, can we get you to sing it? Hang on to the note. You're so pretty.
What? Yeah, my sister probably can.
The Minute Market right down there by the.
In the main part of town, in the old main part of
Just
town.
before you get down to the police station.
Planed?
It's wood come off the place. All of this wood is off the place.
So we cut the logs and hauled them down to a mill and had them sawed out and then hauled them to a planer and had them planed.
And then brought them back and stored them in the barn for a year of season. Then we began to work on the house.
Beautiful.
So that's knotty pine, yellow pine.
The barn over there, or, you know, our house over there, the barn was built we built the barn in our yard. So although they used the upper level for hay, they never used the bottom level until we built the house and moved out, because the barnyard would have been in our front yard.
Maribel, you know where the water tank is for the stock? That was the water into the house.
I see.
That came into the kitchen of the house.
Why don't you go out and show John and he can tell him that again on the picture?
The house grew up on the hill. That house, the hill, right south the house, great big trees, and we had people come in, belts came in, the timber, and we had to haul it to Cortland to have it sawed, and then, you know, to go to the planing mill, and had to haul it back. Started in the barn, and then we began to dig the basement.
Did we dig it like we did the barn, with the horses and the furrow,
No, we hired a
the backhoe?
backhoe.
Cat.
Oh, cat, there was a cat. That, the dirt from that hole probably saved Elizabeth and my life.
It was in a pile out here, and they came home with Spokane with the road to feed, and the brakes went out. It was down the hill up there,
As we turned the corner.
just after they turned the corner. And they were headed to park right by the chicken house, you know. But they couldn't, they were going too fast, and they ran over this bank and stopped. She-Dog came forward, gave her concussion a little bit.
No, fractured my skull. Fractured my skull.
Fractured it.
And clipped Elizabeth's vertebrae. So by Sunday, she couldn't turn her head, and she couldn't move her head at all. Didn't know I'd had a fracture until weeks later, when we wrote to George in Detroit and Grant in
Boston.
no, he was in China.
Oh, was it?
And they both, I don't know which one called and said, get her to the doctor. By then, I wasn't having any problems, so they didn't. And in September, George and Dorothy came out and took me in, and Harvey did a whole series. They did a whole series of x-rays, but it was all healed by then. And I was having terrible, terrible nosebleeds, just crashing nosebleeds, couldn't stop them. But that was a fortuitous thing that happened.
Well, Mother, how big is this, did you plan this house?
Well, it's 38 by 28. And when we got to the kitchen, well, we didn't plan it back very well.
Put your hand down, Mother, because we can't hear you.
When we got to the kitchen, we didn't know what we were going to do. Didn't have any lean-to on that by that time. Before that, we hadn't planned any lean-to. So I wanted a utility room, and I wanted it on this floor. So we were going to take it right off the kitchen. Well, left the kitchen pretty small, and the utility room too. So we put on lean-to for the extension. And there are 3 bedrooms upstairs, and a bathroom, and a walk-in closet, and a living room, and a dining room. No, living room and 2 bedrooms, and a kitchen and a bathroom downstairs. Lots of closets. We just put in closets and things like everything, because we were doing it ourselves.
Well, I know you put in closets and everything, because we've been cleaning them out. It's taken us 2 months to clean them out, Mother, and they were full.
I didn't think that we had anything. But boy, we've been working hard.
Yeah. Not only that, brought out from Kansas when you were a little girl too.
So that's
So we found everything in here, I'll tell you.
not so much when I was a girl, did we?
Yes, we found your diary. when
Yeah, well, I was reading your diary when you were being
College.
courted by Dad. Yeah, and that was kind of interesting.
When did we move in, Mother?
Here. It was August the 14th, I think it was supposed to be my,
We had an open house then.
yeah,
We were just barely in too, weren't we?
yes, we were.
Was the upstairs finished?
Not all. And we didn't finish it till we tore down the old house and used the lumber that was in that old house, the good lumber. You know, it was sheeted on the inside with
Yeah,
ceiling,
yeah,
or flooring, which is
Flooring.
flooring.
flooring. And we had it planed, made nice floors
Yeah,
upstairs.
that's
It was
it's
red
first.
floor,
It's
red
red bird.
floors.
Yeah.
At the time that we built this house, the lower part, the oak flooring was cheaper than wedge flooring,
Yeah,
so we put oak flooring.
yeah.
Didn't put,
And it's not the 1/4 inch that you see on most places either. This is 3/4 inch solid oak flooring in this house.
Mother, do you remember how you and Elizabeth and I felt about leaving that old house? To move out of that house and move into this one?
so traumatic like this.
Yeah.
I remember Fred, you know, Fred was used to having things nice. I mean, he was a mail carrier and had a pretty good wage, a pretty good wage, yeah. And his wife always had things nice. But he came out and visited. Oh, he liked that old house. It seemed like I'm going home, he said.
Well, for us, all of the boys' memories were gone. I was the only one that was a child in this house. Elizabeth was out of high school.
This was built for a house for Mother and Dad.
Sure it was.
The kids grew up and left the other one. Yeah. I remember helping with the construction here.
Well, everybody had their finger in it.
Yeah.
Somebody painted, somebody nailed, everybody else. It's the house that Jack built.
Well, and you kind of had an annual party getting ready for winter here too, Mother. I know that's meant a lot to you across the years. You want to talk about that a little bit?
The buzzing bees?
Yeah.
You need to tell them about your furnace first.
Oh, well, the furnace. The first,
You didn't have a furnace.
we didn't have a furnace.
No, we didn't have a furnace. The first
We
year.
had a cook stove out in the kitchen. Didn't work so very good. And what heat we had, we used this fireplace the first year. That was the year that May passed away. Then the next year we put in a furnace. And Mr. Kildow gave us a stove out of one of their CCC camps for barracks.
Yeah, that was on
Well,
the,
it was on the Fort
ground
Sherman.
Fort Sherman,
It was out of the officer quarters, is what it was.
where the where the community college is.
Yeah, but it was brought in from a CCC camp.
Oh, I
Oh,
see.
is that right? Okay.
Yeah. And
Well, it's an old, really what it is, it's an old Army
Barracks.
barracks.
well, that's what they use out in the CCC.
Was it a furnace or was it a stove? Was it
Yeah.
always a furnace?
No, it's one of these top bellies.
Probably a big potbelly stove.
And we took it to Parrot. I saw Parrot the other night.
Yeah.
I don't think he went, I don't know, but he didn't speak to him. I don't think he recognized him, but I
Oh,
recognized
you
him.
knew who you were.
Well, I didn't get to speak to him. Anyway, he built a jacket around it like we used to have stoves in school when I went to school. Way back as a kid, back in Kansas, they had a jacket around it. And he built a jacket around it. And we had purposely left two doors on the back way because the cellar way was right in front of one. Couldn't get around the curve to take anything big down. And so we had left that door. And so worked hard to get that big prison jacket down that cellar way, and they finally got it. And then he studied the house to get the heat system right. And he made the, what do you call them?
The vents. The leads, all the leads.
He made all those, some of them great big. And then he brought those on. And Vern put them up, taped them up. Together we got a, and that, we're still using that furnace. And it hasn't cracked, it's steel, didn't cast iron.
Well, and you burn wood in it.
Oh yes, and that we burned wood. And we had every fall, and not always, but toward the last, every fall, as many people of the family who get here would come. This was after Vern left. And John would cut the wood during the summer and stack a lot of it up there in the wood yard. And then everybody that could would come, little kids too. When the kids were little, this happened. We saw that wood, 10 or 12 cords, and then everybody would haul it down. People would haul it down, and even little kids would throw it down into the basement. And then little kids would go down there and the mothers would help and pile it all up. So my wood was all under cover.
It was a big party right around your birthday all the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, yes, that's right.
And you always made a big pot of,
Chili.
yeah.
Yeah, until they got so they didn't, some of them didn't like to take chili very well, so I was kind of hesitated about that.
Well, when you were working downstairs pretty hard and after eating chili was a little bit noisy down there.
Last couple of years have been pretty light ones though.
Yeah.
And we've didn't take all day to buzz and had hay rides and walks and and treasure hunts.
Well, and then we didn't have to put in so much wood some of those years because there were 3 or 4 years that Mother
She
went
was
back
gone.
to live with
And
to
then
stay with
besides there was,
Lee.
then there was sometimes wood left over.
Yeah.
But the wood buzzings didn't start with this house. We had wood buzzings from the time we moved up here because we built that wood shed. Your wood's always been undercover. We built that wood shed not long after we moved in up here, and we stored all of it in the wood shed.
Oh, that's right. But I remember George going out and getting wood, sawing out winter evenings enough for the next day.
Yeah.
When you first moved up here?
Well, we didn't always get it in time before the snow hit. That was part of the problem.
Well, we weren't used to this.
Well, of course we weren't.
Well, by the time all of you were gone, and Elizabeth and I were the only ones here, we did get it all done and in the woodshed, so that all we had to do was go out and chop it and bring it in, because we didn't have to go out and
I
saw it.
had forgotten that. I remember you and Elizabeth played with Carl and got him in a snowdrift and covered all up with snow except just his head.
And he'd just sit there and take his
I don't know what you're talking about. What's Carlo?
Carl's our favorite old dog. You tell us about him.
Oh, well, we had several dogs, but we got this dog, Carl, from somebody over.
Shillings.
Yeah, Shillings, just south of Post Falls, up in the hill there. And little
Cat-
roly-poly dog, and
Carried him home in the old folk.
yeah, and we trained that dog. We'd take him up on the backside of the place when we'd go up to get the cattle, and we'd put him down and talk to him, and he was so roly-poly, he'd stumble and fall and roll down the hill and yip like mad. But he grew up to be quite a dog. In fact, he grew up to be a very unusual dog in that we trained him. He could jump through little barrel hoops, and we'd set him up on a barrel or a box and tell him to sit there, and we could walk off a half mile, and then by just motioning, he'd jump off and come to us, and we trained him to go up to the top of the hill and get the cattle, so that when it was time to get the cattle in, we were milking cows at that time, and they had to be milked, of course, at night. So he'd go up in the mountain, and let him come out of the house and say, "Carl, it's time to get the cattle." And boy, he was all for it. And all he had to say is, "Well, go get them." So up the hill he'd go, and he'd search the hills until he found the cattle and bring the cattle in right behind him. And sometimes he'd miss one or two, and all he had to do was walk through the herd and say, "Well, Carlo, you missed old Blackie. How come you missed Blackie? You didn't get Blackie. Well, go get her." So back up the hill he'd go, and he'd search all over the mountain until he found Blackie, and bring Blackie down too. So he was just an unusual kind of a dog. I never knew, he wasn't vicious, but I was told by people that when they came to the place, he'd stand his ground and raise the hair on his back, and you knew that you didn't go any closer. He wouldn't bark, and he would, well, I guess he'd bark, but he wouldn't bite. I never knew him to bite anybody except my daughter.
And David.
And David. And
the grandchildren.
as he was getting older, and they were teasing him.
And he was jealous of that attention. He really was.
So, but anyway, he was the family dog that anybody in the family could handle, and he was trained to go command with anybody in the family. I remember, I don't know if you remember when I came back from overseas. He came down to Spokane to get me, and I came in here when we used to park up there by the old house, you remember, up there by the barn. I stayed in the car. You guys went on down to the house, and so I was going to see if Carlo remembered me. I got out of the car, and I talked to him. I mentioned him. Now, I hadn't seen him for 3 years, and boy, I'll tell you, he came over there, and he just cried like a baby, rubbed it up against my leg, and just cried and moaned, and he just wouldn't get away from me, and walked with me all the way down and in the house. He was just a wonderful dog, family dog that is a part of the history of this family.
Well, one of the things he did too, whenever at this time the boys were leaving to go to the army or the school or somewhere, there was the army mostly then. He would not be in sight when you left. He was hid. He wouldn't come where they were going. And in some way
He knew some way, and he couldn't stand to say goodbye, so he wouldn't even be around. He was a great
Mother,
dog.
when did we have the barn raising?
Well, that was 47.
Was that 47? And all the neighbors all over came in.
We had the Cedar Creek Club
That
to
was
help with the barn raising. And Vern had all 8 of those big ribs made for that. All laid down on the floor. You weren't with us that day
No,
for some
I
reason.
don't know where I was that
Oh,
day.
you might have been teaching or in school or something.
I don't think we did it on a Saturday. I don't think.
I was
I
teaching
don't think
in
we did it on
Spokane.
Saturday.
Thursday, always we
I
have.
was teaching in Spokane. Now, well, no, I was going to school yet. I didn't start teaching until 48.
Well, anyway, we didn't have a tractor, we just had the team yet. That team was mighty important to us.
That wasn't the ones we brought from Colorado.
No, they weren't the
Were these the big ones? Or was this Babe and Peggy?
bag and Peggy. Well, he had built, what do you call that thing that stood in the middle of the barn?
The cupola? The cupola? No.
It stood on the floor, you stood on this to build.
Well, it was scaffolding.
Scaffolding. It was 16 feet tall.
Yeah.
Well, when he had that built. And he had everything ready. And the men were here, the families came. They brought their dinners. And the men were here and Vern had them lined up, tell them what to do, just exactly what to do. And he would drive the team and bring that live up. Those guys were just so scared. No, so that they wouldn't, nobody could do that. They weren't gonna help. They weren't going to try. We had a hired man at that time. And I don't know who it was that helped, but
They did help. They did help.
did they finally?
Yeah. We got it up that day. We got all those ribs in place, didn't we?
No, the one.
Only
or
one?
two, maybe. Only one, I think. One out. Moisers came the next day now. And somebody else was telling me the other day that they helped. I can't remember who it was. Anyway, we got it up. Maybe you came too. I don't know whether you helped with this roof. Remember those big timbers?
Oh, those great big white old ones that from all the old buildings we'd taken out. All those boards that we put on those things.
We had the floor up, we had the basement and the floor on it.
Yeah.
Even Elizabeth and I worked on that. They wouldn't let us go up. You and Dad wouldn't let us go up on the last pitch. But we put undersiding, the boards on. And then when we got all through, we had a barn dance.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
we did, before we put the hay in Buford's bench,
Had a
and
big barn dance.
and the group from the ILE came, and we had a big barn dance.
Oh, we had a club in there first. Before first thing we had, it was City Creek Club we had in there.
Did we?
Quite a bit.
Most everything we've done, it's been hard work, but we've done it with playful attitude and done some play along with it. Never was.
Well, sensible people have lifts and derricks and all of these kinds of things to do, but we always managed to do it this way, you know, and it was just, you remember much longer.
They didn't have lifts those days.
Oh, yes, they did.
Well, not the commonly
Yeah,
like they do now.
well, not as common, but they had them.
But they weren't using them very much.
Oh, yes, they were using them a lot of places,
Not
but,
on the
but
farms.
not not on poor farms with poor farmers. That's right. That's correct.
The years you were having your buzzing bees, didn't it become tradition? You went to church the next morning and the group of you sang?
Occasionally.
As many as we could.
Wasn't there at times, though, like 20, 25 of you?
Oh, lots of times.
Sometimes there were more than that.
Yeah.
Just depended on.
Sometimes there were 45.
I mean, 20 or 25
It was a small
was
group.
a small group.
Yeah.
And one of your main songs was what?
Trust. And that, Vern and I used to sing that in high school. Oh, we had the most wonderful music teacher. And we learned everything without the piano. And this trust, it's not an easy song. It's a real classic. And years 68 and 69 when the burn was in the homes. And it was so bad here, and Catherine lived in Moses Lake, and they came over. Not even any overshoes on. And the snow was so deep that there was just a little trough that you could drive through on the road. 6 feet of snow. And
That was the summer of '68. In fact, the snow
was 6 feet
was
deep.
6 feet deep from the house, and it went over the top of the chicken house out there, so that you couldn't even see that there was a chicken house out there. The snow was up to the window level here, and just straight across all the way to that building, and over the top of that building, and on across to the next one.
Well, anyway,
Was it a large drift?
No, it wasn't. It
No,
was just
that's
the level of
up
the
here.
snow.
Huh.
Well, it probably drifted in a little between the buildings, but I mean, it was just that full.
The wind is very gentle up here, and it's rare that you have any kind of a drift.
no, we didn't have any snow any wind that year. Chinooks didn't come.
And I tell you just almost housebound.
During some of those hard winters was when you did all your quilting?
That's when I began. I would have gone stir crazy if I hadn't had.
That's when you start doing all the Afghans, isn't it?
How many aprons and quilts did you make? Do you have any idea?
Well, I made one for each one of my grandchildren, and I made one for
Each of the children.
maybe I didn't that winter, but
The first one you made was for Bill. Because he always complained about the fact that I started an Afghan when I was pregnant with twins and I'd never finished it.
oh, I didn't remember that.
Well, we've got that one.
Well, anyway, I'd done it one grandchildren. I made all 21 of those, and I made for my 2 sisters, and I made for some of you children, but I didn't get them all done that winter. I expect close to 30.
The Afghans, she began giving to the kids as they graduated from high school. Isn't that right? Some had already graduated by the time she started, but she gave those to them, caught up with them.
Well, that winter was pretty rough. I started to tell you about Catherine's family came, and at that time you couldn't drive in. You just had to dig a place to put your car so the cars could go by on the road. And they walked in. Oh, there's probably at this time 4 or 5 feet of snow, 3 or 4 feet of snow.
But there was a little path as you got out to get the mail.
How high was it on your railing out front?
What do you ask?
Now, how high would it have been on the railing out front?
Well, the railing wasn't there.
The porch was
Well, it had slid off the house
It
here, so
would've
you
been-
couldn't even see out the windows.
Wow. Amazing.
Well, it wasn't quite that bad, was it?
Well, yes, it was. It slid off the top of this roof. It was packed so high you couldn't see down. You could only look up.
And then the fence posts out there, could you see your fence posts?
Oh, no, they were all covered over. Everything was just a
Well, you
blur.
walked right over the top of it. Finally the stuff began to melt. But I told you no Chinooks. Finally the stuff began to melt, and it began to settle just a little bit at a time. And you walked right over the top of the fences.
Well, it was really
And
heavy.
we had planted some new trees that summer.
Snow, when it got heavy, all the fences just were stripped right off of the posts and laying on the ground in the spring. We had to go back and redo all the fences in the whole property. It was really a tough winter. So,
There have not been too many winters like that, though, since you moved to Idaho in '35. Was that the only one that was that bad?
Yes.
that bad. But 48, 49 was a heavy
Yes.
winter also.
52 was too.
well, but normally you get, normally your snow comes and you get these little Chinooks that take it off. That particular year, though, there were no Chinooks, and it just kept piling up and piling up and piling it up. And it came in early November and didn't leave until April.
No, it wasn't gone until April, but we didn't have any snows
After September,
After
after
the
February.
14th of February.
Yeah,
Grant was out from Boston.
middle of
You got
February.
everything opened up.
Yeah.
That's when you had them come in and plow out all that snow.
That's
How did that compare in coldness to 88, 89?
what did you say?
Oh, temperature-wise.
Because 88, 89, we had two real hard colds.
We didn't, it wasn't cold.
Yeah,
It wasn't that cold. It was, all we had 0 and maybe 5, 10 below. But it was not really cold, except that it was just not melting, so if the snow stayed on the ground all winter long. Didn't have any Chinooks that took it off that year at all. In fact, in Spokane, where I live, they had plowed and pushed the snow off to the side as far as they could go, and it was piled up so high you couldn't see over the top of you couldn't see the houses as you drive down the street. And the only way that people could tell if anything was coming, they'd take bandanas and tie on their antennas of the cars and run them up in the air as far as they could, or fasten something up there so that they could see. And that's how people got around. They
That's the way they did in Corlin too.
couldn't even get into your property. You just dig a hole in the back of the snowbank and back your car in there, and that was the way you kept the streets open.
Wilma Young, where Mother's going to be living, told us that is the winter that her daughter and her husband moved here in December of '68.
Oh, is that where'd they come from?
California.
Oh,
Transferred up here with DT. that was the winter that they moved here.
Baptism in ice cubes.
That's right.
Do you have any other batteries for this one? And then why don't you two just sing up to your...
I'm going to leave this Wes's house before the new people will come, because I hope they appreciate what kind of a home it's been. So will you sing it for me?
Bless this house, O Lord, we pray. Make it safe by night and day. Bless these walls so firm and stout, keeping want and troubles out. Bless the roof and chimneys tall. Let thy peace lie over all. Bless this door that it may prove ever open to joy and love. Bless these windows shining bright, letting in God's heavenly light. Bless the hearth blazing there, with smoke ascending like a prayer. Bless the folk who dwell within, keep them pure and free from sin. Bless us all that we may be fit, O Lord, to dwell with thee. Bless us all that one day we may dwell, O Lord, with thee.
I applaud, but I'd have to drop the camera.
It probably wasn't worth that much. Go out and show you where the old house was, where
Okay.
the buildings were out there when we first arrived.
You know, I think I remember a story that didn't get told that I think really is funny about the goat. Didn't you tell me a story about the goat and he wanted to butt all the time? Didn't you have a goat here?
No, not here. That's on the house up under the hill.
That was in Colorado.
Oh, that's an older.
We never had a goat here because of that.
That was sheep.
Was that sheep? Well, that was the reason we didn't ever
We
have
never
that.
had a goat.
Okay,
Well, I thought it was a goat that you had in, okay.
yeah. Well, we don't need that story then.
This was added a little later after we built the house out here, and these brick or stone stones right here were the old part of the old elementary school in Post Falls.
Oh, wow.
And Dad got a hold of them, and when they tore it down and built a new school and brought them up here, and they used these for making this little garage.
Uh-huh.
So that has some historic value to the community too. The roadway came up up there by that building originally, and then turned down above this building here, and then the parking was just on the upper side of where the barn was, or is now. So we'll walk up that way and take a look at it. Oh yes, well they've been full of birds too. None of them. We've added all of these buildings, but the road we'll come walk in as though we were coming in here. This road wasn't here. This was. Look at, here's deer track in here. They're in here every night.
My goodness.
Yeah, but we came over up this way and down this road right here, and then parked right here. And the barn was in the corner of that field right there.
Uh-huh.
And then there were a string of buildings along like this below. And then the house is on down here, and I'll show you where the house was.
Okay.
So, come on down. There in the corner of that little field.
Uh-huh.
And this was area parking, and the garden, the people that had this before, the water comes over, there's a spring way up a quarter of a mile up the hill up there.
Uh-huh.
And the water comes right down over by these trees up here, and right down across this field, and there's a little pipe standing right there with the fence.
Oh, yeah.
And they had the water pipes across here, and they had a big garden area here. So this.
Fertile land?
Well, yes, it is, and it's kind of wet too. Even while I've got it in, I keep it in alfalfa, and in the summer this rejuvenates because it seems to have a rather high water table right in here.
Huh. I've noticed that it's quite rocky around the driveway and everything. There's a lot of decomposed granite or whatever.
That's hauled in here.
Oh, okay.
There's very little rock in this place at all.
That's interesting.
There's a few outcroppings of large rock, but there's no small rock at all. The valley has a lot of small rock, but up here it's just mountain soil, and it's good soil.
Huh.
So, anyway, you came down into here where the water there came into the kitchen of the house.
Uh-huh.
And the house extended out this way and over that way. And then this cellar was this cellar right here,
Uh-huh.
where it came out of the house and over to the cellar, and that was where the apples and potatoes and everything. It never froze in there, and it's a good place to keep canned stuff and all the vegetables and fruit. Then there was a whole string of buildings right along where this barn is located.
Uh-huh.
And we tore those down and excavated underneath those buildings for the present barn.
Uh-huh.
That sat out here just the other side of this post right in there.
Uh-huh.
We built that other chicken house and we tore this down. And then after we had there was another chicken house a little bit smaller than that one that we built right over here. And of course the folks were involved in raising chickens, and we supplied a lot of eggs to hospitals in Spokane, and
Uh-huh.
also a lot of fried chickens and stuff. We raised and had we kept about 600 laying hens during the year, and got 1,000 new chicks every spring, and kept the pullets and for the hens, laying hens, and then butchered out all the cocks for sale.
Pretty good operation.
Yeah, it was. It was how we survived the Depression.
Uh-huh.
32 feet wide and 64 feet long. And there's a 10-foot basement, bank 3 sides. And then the loft of the barn is 16 feet from the floor of the barn to the beginning of the rafters with the hip roof on it. So that'll hold a lot of hay.
Uh-huh. How much livestock did it have to support, typically?
Oh, we were milking probably 10 cattle and had a bunch of beef cattle and a bunch of horses too.
Uh-huh.
It was made for a place to keep horses as well as cattle.
And then there was enough capacity, feed capacity to carry those through the winter then?
Well, we have developed that many now, and we had pretty close. We'd run a little short of feed once in a while if we had bad winters, but we developed enough fields in the area that we could pretty well take care of them
Uh-huh.
after we had. The timbers on this barn were cut off on the place here. We had trees on the place big enough to cut these timbers out. Now these timbers up in here, these support timbers are 10 by 18.
Uh-huh.
And this middle one right here is 24 feet long. So to have a tree big enough to cut a 10 by 18, 24 feet long, takes pretty good sized trees.
Yes, sir.
In fact, we had trees on the place when we moved here that were 4 and 5 feet through.
Uh-huh.
So and we built this center part for stalls for milking cattle. The end of the barn over there, that other end was to put horses in, and this other end was to put calves and stuff in. So it was pretty well designed, and we had stock to fill it up pretty well.
Uh-huh. And used a PV to move those from their site.
Yeah, I took a PV and rolled these timbers into place from the upper part of the foundation back there. Just put some skids out and moved them out there and rolled them out in place.
So you had, it looks like 3 times 3, about 9 large timbers here.
That's right. The middle ones are 24 feet long, and I believe the others are about 18 feet long, something like that. The total of the tree is 64 feet.
Uh-huh.
So they're pretty good sized timbers. Took a little strength to get them out there, I'll tell you.
Uh-huh. Yeah, they're massive.
Now we'll go upstairs by the stairway there so that we can see what the building looks like above. And I'm moving it over here a ways because that is a bad situation. This, it'll hold a good many ton of hay. We built it for putting in loose hay. And we used a hay rack and
About 10 minutes ago, the guy from the mortgage company called.
from the mortgage.
Wherever you're supposed to go sign the lease.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, so your mom's getting a little worried about what time we're supposed to.
Oh, that you set the hay rack outside the door there and then put in loose hay. Somebody had to be in here to mow back the loose hay.
It predates baling then.
Pardon?
It predates widespread baling anyway.
Yeah. And of course now, with the baled hay, you just come up to the door and put it on the elevator. And I generally use 2 elevators in here, and I can shoot the bale and go back to the end here. This building up to about the level of the sill up there.
Uh-huh.
We can raise just about that much hay, which will, I think, would allow us to take probably 20 to 25 head of cattle through the winter. So That's a lot of hay.
Uh-huh.
So, okay.
How high is it at the crest there, at the apex?
Oh, probably about 32 feet from where our feet are.
Uh-huh.
About 32 feet.
Or some 40 feet from grade or more?
Yeah, about something to stick and freeze on it. The first warm day you have, the metal warms up just a little bit and the snow just goes shooting off, so you never have any problem with snow staying on it at all. A place to feed his cattle, so he put this lean-to, built this lean-to on here, and so that there's a place to feed cattle down here. You can feed the cattle from the barn, so that he doesn't have to take the hay down below. He just do his feeding right down here.
Uh-huh.
So, then the rest of these buildings, this was a building that was built for a granary to store wheat in. We had bought a little property down across the river on Greensbury Road and raised wheat, so he built this as a little granary to put his wheat in. The first building we built after we moved up here was this second building up here. That was a little, we had no building that the water would go off of, so that we had a place to store anything and keep it dry. And so that was the first one we built there.
The one which has a harvester in there, or a
Right.
hay implement?
Right, I've got my swather in there.
It looks a little more crude. It has round poles in the roof and so forth.
It was built, we bought the rough lumber down at the sawmill in Post Falls and used the trees up here on the farm. To, tamarack trees off of the hills for the posts to build it. Didn't cost us very much because you could buy lumber pretty cheap in those days.
Now that would be the mill that's on the LP site right now?
That's right.
Okay.
That's been there many, many years, and that mill was operating when we moved up here.
Huh.
It had been operating for years before that.
Uh-huh.
And lumber was fairly cheap, so we bought 1x12 boards, and then we ran them lengthways with the roof above, and then put 1x4 batting on them so that it made a solid roof come down so that the water would drain off. For myself here, I've been farming this place. Dad wasn't able to farm it at all after 1960.
Uh-huh.
And then he finally died in 1971, but in 1960, with him not being able to farm and Mother and Dad still living here in the place, I started farming it full-time myself.
Uh-huh.
I was principal at North Central at that time.
So you had dual careers.
And I had dual careers, so I've been farming for 30 years here myself. And so, yes, when you say it's a little bit hard to leave, yeah, it's going to be a change for me too, because I have done a lot of logging on the timber. I've done a lot of tree farming. I've cleaned up the forests, and I've kept up the fields and the fences and all, and kept a few cattle on the place. So I've been a farmer for a long time too, in addition to everything else that I do. So it's been kind of fun, and I'm going to miss it. No question about that.
Yeah.
He walked up here. Here's one, and here's one. There they are, and there they are. He just was down here in Mother's garden overnight.
Yeah, you're not surrounded by any real close neighbors to the south, other than the nature itself.
It's a half mile up to the next place.
Uh-huh.
There's a house at the next place, but it's a half mile south. But our property, you see that hill up there? You see that big dead snag right on the point of the hill?
Oh, yeah.
That's just about the southwest corner of our property. We run from there all the way a mile down here to the road, and then from there a half mile over there, which goes, the line is clear over the top of that little knoll way up there.
Oh.
And you see that last tree over there, that last tall tree where it kind of drops down way up on top? That's the north line of our property. It comes down across here, a mile back to Greensbury Road. So it's a half a mile wide when you get up there, you're looking right down on the Post Falls.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a half-mile wide, and then it extends a mile from there clear down onto Greensbury Road here. So there's a half section, 320 acres here.
Wow.
About 280 acres of timber and about 40 acres in building site and fields. Coming right down here and over there in the mother's garden. She was squawking about that the other day because she said that they'd gotten her corn.
Uh-huh. So this was a result of the 1990 storm, this rivulet here.
Oh yeah, that was just 3 weeks ago, that big storm that came through here.
Uh-huh.
I just haven't had time to close up the ditch yet. Was that Dale called? Yeah. Okay, I'll give it a call.
She didn't want to subtract the kitchen space. She wanted this as a separate space.
Right. She needed extra space, and so they added that on there to... I'm going to give you a call. I'm later coming down, and I thought I would be. Okay, I'm going to, do we meet you down there? Let's plan to meet you down there at 1:15, up at your bank. Yours and mine.